Hi, and today is the 10th of the month of Iyar, and we are 2 days away from finishing Maseches Shekalim. We left off at the bottom of Chaf Aleph Amud Beis with the Mishnah, and we are gonna get most of the way through the next Amud, but we'll leave a little bit because the final Amud is very, very short. So we'll begin with the Mishnah, 3 lines from the bottom of Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, where the Mishnah tells us Basar Kachim Shenitma, and we're gonna have a four-way machlokes here. So buckle up. If you have meat of Kodesh Kodashim that became Tameh, that means a chatas, for example. So a kohen is supposed to eat it, but it became Tameh. Now, an asham and an olah is also, but most of the time we'll probably be talking about a chatas, because that's what the kohen would want to be eating. But it applies for everything else. Whether it be with a avatuma, that's a sheretz, or a vladatuma, which is a derivative of tuma, and we'll talk about what kind of derivative a little bit later, but not an avatuma. Bein bifnim bein mechutz, whether it became tameh bifnim, inside of the azara, or bachutz, or outside of the azara. Beis Shammai says, Beis Shammai, I call you sarif bifnim. You bring it all inside the azara to be burnt. Unless it was made tameh with an avatuma outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and we're going to discuss why that is later. So we have two variables that we're going to be talking about here, and 4 opinions. Each of them going to splice it differently. You have a avatuma, vladatuma, and where it became tameh bifnim and bachutz. Says Beis Shammai, everything is going to be burnt bifnim unless it was made tameh with an avatuma outside, then it is burnt outside. Beis Hillel says, everything has to be burnt outside. That's the total opposite extreme opinion. Beis Shammai is of the opinion that everything is burnt bifnim unless it is the most severe kind of tumah, and it was made tameh outside. And Beis Hillel is of the opinion that everything is burnt outside unless it is the least severe kind of tumah, and it became tameh bifnim, inside. Turning over the page to Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion that if it became tameh with an avatum, whether it was inside or outside, yisar b'chutz. Now, avatum is always going to be burnt outside. If it was made tameh with a vladatum, bein mechutz bein mifnim, yisar b'fnim. Meaning he doesn't care about what kind of tumah it is. It's just a question of the location of where the tumah took place. If it was made tameh outside, it's burnt outside. If it was made tameh inside, it's burnt inside. Rabbi Akiva says, "Malcolm tumah sham shvivastai." It doesn't make a difference what kind of tumah it is. Wherever it became tameh, that is where it is going to be burnt. Meaning, as opposed to Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that avatuma, avatuma, whether it is bifnim or chutz, it's always going to be chutz, and vladatuma, whether it is bifnim or chutz, it's always going to be bifnim. Meaning the only operative variable for him is what kind of tumah it is. According to Rabbi Akiva, the total opposite. It all depends on the location of the tumah, not the severity of it. And now we are going to try to understand what vlad hatumah are we talking about here. Says the Gemara, Bar Kapara Amar Bar Kapara says, Avatum Dvar Torah. Obviously, the avatum that we're speaking about is a avatum mid'araisa. However, the vladatum midivrem, that is only a din midrabanan. With regards to the vladatum, we are talking about the vlad hatuma that's the rabbanan. That's what the machlokes is about, yeah. And Rabbi Yochanan says, "Bein zeh dvar Torah." No, we're talking about the vladatum mid'araisa as well. That's what the machlokes is. And now the Gemara is going to challenge Rabbi Yochanan, and ultimately you just abandon Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. V'kasha Rabbi Yochanan the Beis Shammai. Rabbi Yochanan's opinion is difficult for Beis Shammai. Why? The Beis Shammai says, "Hakol yisar b'fnim." Everything is burnt inside. Chutz mishenitma ba'avatuma b'chutz, unless it was made tameh with an avatuma outside of the azara. Now's the question. Ma bein avatuma b'chutz, ma bein v'lalatuma b'chutz. What's the difference between an avatuma and a vlalatuma if they both deraisa outside? Zeh v'zeh lo davar taru. Well, both of these, it's an issa deraisa for you to bring it inside. Why would you ever bring it inside? That's question number one. Even according to Beis Hillel, this is not difficult. Rabbi Yochanan's opinion is difficult for him too. Beis Hillel says everything has to be burnt outside. Unless it was made tamei with a vladatuma inside. Says the Gemara, ma bein vladatuma bifnim, ma bein avatuma bifnim. What's the difference between vladatuma and avatuma bifnim? Meaning, if it's inside, so then the din is that you should burn it right away. Why would you need to take it outside? Both of them are equally the same din. They're both a din of deraisa, according to Rabbi Yochanan. Meaning, if one can be burnt inside, the other one should be burnt inside. There should be no difference between them. Says the Gemara, the Rabban really only had a discussion about the opinion of Rabbi of Bar Kapara. They abandoned the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. They didn't agree with it. They said it didn't make sense. So they only learned the sugya according to Bar Kapara. V'kash the Bar Kapara al Dveisha. Now you have a problem because according to the opinion of Bar Kapara, you still have a question with regards to the opinion of Beis Shammai. Why? The Beis Shammai says Hakol Yisar Bifnim Chutz Mishnim Avatum V'Chutz. Beis Shammai is of the opinion that everything is burnt inside of the azara, unless it was an avatuma that made the tameh on the outside of the azara. Outside of the azara, that's when it has to be burnt outside. Ma bein avatuma bein b'chutz bein b'fnim. What's the difference between avatuma, whether it is inside or outside? Zeh v'zeh l'dvar taru. Both of these things, the location of it doesn't change how tameh it is. So if it's tameh, it should be left. It has to be taken outside. Should be taken outside. Why would you say that an avatuma that is inside can be burnt inside? You should take it out. It says the Gemara begin to Rabbi Akiva, because of the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Now Rabbi Akiva is obviously after the days of Beis Shammai, but Beis Shammai holds the same way that Rabbi Akiva does a few generations later. What does Beis Shammai, Rabbi Akiva say? Makom to Masai Sham Teishav Hasai. He thinks that in general, the place that it becomes tamei is the place that it needs to be burnt. And because of this, Beis Shammai is of the opinion that the basar of the kachim that became tamei with an avatuma outside has to be burnt outside. It cannot be brought inside to be burnt, even though, strictly speaking, there's no issur of bringing it inside to be burnt. But because of the din of Rabbi Akiva that he holds of, that Beis Shammai holds of as well, it it cannot be brought inside. It has to be burnt there. But according to Beis Hillel, kapara is not a problem. It is a problem. The Beis Hillel says, everything should be burnt outside, except for something that became tam with the vladatuma inside. What's the difference between the vladatuma and the inside and the outside? In both cases, it's only an issa d'Rabbanan. It's only an issa d'Rabbanan. Says the Gemara begin to Rabbi Shimon because Beis Shammai holds up the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. What was Rabbi Shimon's opinion? The opinion of Rabbi Shimon is that the food and the drink of a Mitzvah, all of that has to be sent out of all three camps. And that means that once something becomes tamei, even with a tumah midrabanan, which is like the food and drink of a mitzvah, all of that has to be sent out of all three camps. That midrabanan, we also take things out of the machane, because Beis Shammai clearly holds this opinion of Beis Hillel clearly holds this opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Beis Shammai is holding the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Beis Hillel is holding of the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. And therefore, these opinions of both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel work out according to the shita of Bar Kapara. Okay, I think this is now the final Mishnah of Al Masechta. We're going to learn the Mishnah now, and we will leave the Gemara for tomorrow. Says the Mishnah as follows: Every ha tamid, if you have limbs of the korban tamid, So where do they go? They are placed on the bottom half on the ramp and below, meaning the bottom half of the ramp, ba'mariv, on the western side of the ramp. Shel musafin ulamata b'mizrach, and the musafin on the opposite side of the ramp, on the bottom half of the ramp, on the mizrach, on the eastern side. What's the reason for this? Because you don't want to mix them up. If they end up becoming mixed up, then you don't know what to offer first. And a musaf that is brought before the tamid of Tamid Shel Shachar is possible, and that would be a big problem. You would have to redo everything. Says the Gemara. Says the Mishnah. Shel Rosh Chodashim, the musaf of Rosh Chodesh nitnim al karkov hamizbech milemala. The korban of Rosh Chodesh is put on the karkov, and we'll see what the karkov is a little bit later in the Gemara. It has to be on the karkov of the mizbech and on top of the karkov. And now, after talking about the placement of the karbanos, we are now going to talk about what happens when there is no Beis Hamikdash and a person might or might not be chayav to dedicate or do certain avodos. Since we are, after all, in Maseches Shekalim, we start with that. Hashkalim v'abikurim enam noagim ela b'nei habayis. The halacha of bringing the shkalim and the halacha of bringing the bikurim only apply when there is a Beis Hamikdash. Aval ma'aseh dagan ma'aseh behema, but taking off a tenth, a tithe of your grain and your animals, b'charis, and your firstborn animals, noagim b'nei habayis bein shalei b'nei habayis. That does not; those halachas do not depend on whether or not the Beis Hamikdash is standing. They apply all the time. Makdish shkalim ubikurim is somebody that set aside, that designates the shkalim ubikurim bisman aseh, where there is no Beis Hamikdash today. Harei zeh kodesh, it is kodesh, it will work. And Rabbi Shimon says, ha'omer bikurim kodesh enum kodesh. Somebody that says that the bikurim are kodesh, they made these bikurim, so in kodesh that doesn't work. He disagrees about the bikurim, even though he agrees about shkalim. And Be'ez Hashem, we will continue with the Gemara and finish up the Masechta tomorrow. Looking forward, Be'ez Hashem, to wishing everybody a Mazel Tov, and we will be starting Maseches Yuma on Wednesday. Everybody should have a wonderful evening, and we will see you on the morrow.